Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is October 10th, 2018, and this is a very special, exclusive GoldFish Report that we haven't done yet before, but we have returning guests with us. This is the special dragon interview. We've been trying to actually do this for quite some time. And we finally now have pulled this together. So joining me to help do this interview is my co-host Steve over in Tokyo. Thanks, Steve, for joining us.
Hi there, glad to be here. It's going to be a fun day today.
Oh, it will be. I have a feeling it will be. And of course, we have with us from the Red Dragon family, we have the ambassador with us. Welcome, ambassador. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's almost 2 years now. But I was finally allowed by the master to talk again after 2 years, and so this will be the first interview for almost 2 years now.
Okay, and of course we have the spokesperson for the White Dragon Society, Benjamin Fulford, joining us again, a return guest, a return friend, I should say, of the GoldFish Report. Welcome back, Benjamin.
Nice to be back.
Well, I think there's an awful lot to talk about. One of the things I think we want to kind of deal with right up front is I help viewers who might not be completely familiar, since both the Red Dragon and White Dragon representatives are here, help people understand what the relationships are between the two of you and what you represent. You can start with Benjamin.
Okay, what happened, to really summarize things very briefly, I got involved in all this stuff from being a mainstream journalist to this. The transition came from confronting Heizo Takanaka, the Japanese finance minister, asking why he handed over control of all of Japan's listed companies to a bunch of oligarchs like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. And then I got invited to join I was offered the job of finance minister, but I had to agree to participate in a plan to start World War III and kill 90% of humanity through disease, starvation, and war. And then I got approached by a Asian secret society called the Red and the Blue, who said they could only be used for the greater good. So I went to see them, and then their boss asked me to find similar-minded Western groups. And I was able to find people in the Russian FSB, in the CIA, and MI6, Japanese military police, North Koreans, and other people who agreed that we really did need to stop this insane plan. And this was how the White Dragon Society in its current format was born. But there is a Chinese White Dragon Society using the Chinese name Bai Lun, which is older and separate, but they allowed us to use the White Dragon name in English. And you can also trace it to the White Horse Inn, the people who first translated the Bible into English, most of whom were killed by but anyway, the point is that it's a combination of a bunch of Western groups and Asian groups that came into being as a result of this horrendous plot by what I call the Khazarian Mafia, to start an artificial Armageddon. And that's the White Dragon. And later, I was inducted into the Dragon family in a ceremony in Singapore, and that apparently is the Asian royal families. You know, each dynasty from the Han onwards kept a sort of secret organization, and it's these different family groups. For example, the Li family name, which is in Singapore, and then you always see like a number 2 in China being a Li. That's the Tang dynasty, etc. And the Sung sisters who married like Chiang Kai-shek and Sun Yat-sen, they're the Sung dynasty, right? And then, and so on. And this is the White Dragon Society. And the thing I'd also like to say, the biggest new thing that I have to report is that the Manchu dynasty, the Qing dynasty, these are kind of the people that the Red and Blue, the first society that contacted me, were originally formed to fight, also came to me. And it was through the daughter of the last emperor. and they physically gave me a bond, which is part of a series that was traded for the imperial Manchu or Qing dynasty gold. And if they are to, this is the people in the Federal Reserve Board, the Rothschilds, they say the gold is in the mountains, in the hills behind Basel, Switzerland, and it's been financing the G7. That this gold, I haven't found out exactly how much there is, but the bonds are worth $40 trillion if you include the interest. That we can use 90% of that money to finance a big campaign to end poverty and stop environmental destruction and expand out into the universe. So we actually have this now. We have the signed documents. We have the real bonds. I've confirmed with the Bank of Japan and the CIA, and they're real. This is not one of those many con fake jobs out there.
Oh, thank you, Benjamin. That's great. And that's a really great place to leave off because you mentioned some things I think that were familiar to the ambassador. So I like for the ambassador to kind of explain your role with, the family's role with, I guess, within that context, where the family came from. And is there this relationship, what is the relationship with the gold that Benjamin's talking about?
Well, I think that the people that he met in Singapore is the same people, the same family that I represent, and they have, especially they we call the golden dragons. So in that regard, but they are the ones that is holding the royal legacy at this point in time. And but I was allowed to come to contact with the family when I was working in AOS. I think maybe Benjamin Fulford is familiar with AOS. He had them in a chart one time for different organizations. This is also called Alpha Omega Station, which was which was created by Andropo, and where I hold a high position in the security services. And through that work, I came in contact with the family. And a few years ago, when the family decided to wage a war on ignorance and call for the remittance, and surrender of the cabal, I came out and was coming out as a spokesperson, but was not allowed to use my name. I was not allowed to use my picture. And so, for some, we did start the mission. A lot of people has been taken down by the cleanup teams, and they will continue to until we are finished. But 2 years ago, I was told by the master in the meeting in China that now was the time to, be quiet and let the people do their work. And of some reason, the family was, when I said that we might, I was asked to do this interview with Benjamin Fulford, both the master and also the other person, which is one of which is called the Red Dragon, which said that I should do this program with Benjamin and invite him to meet up with us in China. So,
well, like I said, I'm ready to go to China whenever. I because I have a Japanese passport now, I can go without a visa anytime, and it's just a 2-hour flight for me. So later, maybe you can give me details of what city and what hotel to go to, and I can do it. Give me a couple of weeks warning.
That's very good, because years ago when we first had started GoldFish Report, the ambassador was talking about remit and surrender, which you already mentioned. You gave messages directly to the Pope and other world leaders, and a lot of times your messages, which people didn't realize at the time, were coded for many different people.
No, the funny thing is that in the beginning, when I did this Christmas and New Year speech, the Pope, it was done one day before the actual day, each recording. And if you listen to my speech and then listen to the Pope's speech the day after, he mimicked everything that I was saying in the speeches. So, and also when he was elected, the number 555 was hit on the lightning on the watch there at the Vatican. That was the start of a new era. And I don't know if Benjamin is familiar with this code 555, but this is a family code, and this is what's going to take over the old system.
The code I've familiar with keeps popping up is 5558.
So this is the thing, and also it's a code which the families people know, which was the 303 would become 555, and the free bird will come with I owe you, and this is the time when basically these people need to remit what they owed back to the family, and so that it can be used for the proper things for the world. You know.
Let me see if Steve has a question at this time. Steve.
Yes. Sorry, I'm off the street now. Very interested about this 555. Benjamin, what do you mean 5558? Do you have an idea what that means exactly?
It's an esoteric number that appears at key times. I don't want to get more into it. It's not something that you can explain verbally.
Okay.
A lot of the stuff, it just, at certain points, certain numbers appear. They seem to indicate that we're at a certain point in some kind of complex, unfolding mathematical equation that we experience as reality.
Is it to do with cycles as well?
Yeah, it's to do with what they call a cusp event, where it's known as a fractal phase change. So, for example, an example we can understand is when the sperm hits the egg, and then you're going to get this incredible expansion to a new human being. It's something like that that's happened to the planet Earth. Okay, that much I can say.
Right. And Ambassador, what do you say to that? What does 555 mean to you and your family?
No, but that's great, because 555 means so many things to so many people, but at the same time it means the same for everyone. You understand? And basically, it is a family code. We cannot go too deep into the codes and too deep into the sort of things which, the ones who know what we're talking about know what we're talking about. And the people who doesn't know what we're talking about, it's not meant to them to know.
Okay.
Yes.
So what would that mean for humanity then, 555, if that were to be the new paradigm?
I think this is the last hope, to be honest with you, because also, if you go back to my first speech I ever did, I was talking about that people should, have protests, basically refuse to obey orders. You understand? And that everyone is responsible for the whole masses. We cannot hide behind, blaming it on Obama. We have to take responsibility ourselves, and that we ourselves have to, stop taking orders and basically do what's right. And also we were talking about that people should remit and surrender, and they will be a part of the 555. But some of the people have decided to jump the buildings instead.
All right. If I may swing back just to the bond that you mentioned, Benjamin. So you're saying it's worth trillions. So who would cash that bond in potentially? Would that be the Federal Reserve?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it seems to be that the trail leads to both the Federal Reserve, and if you talk to the Federal Reserve, they kind of point to Basel, Switzerland, the BIS. But, what we can do, the only thing we can do is go after the visible part, which is like the Bank for International Settlements building in Basel, Switzerland, and then the actual heads of like the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, the Federal Reserve Board. The part that we can see is what we have to put pressure on in order to make this happen. At the same time, we need to reassure that people that this is no threat to any existing sovereign government. It's not, we're not going to suddenly remove the United States establishment from power, for example. This is about creating something entirely new in harmony with that which already exists, not to replace it, but to add something extra. So it's not a threat to the existing world structure, except for the mass murder and criminal elements within that structure.
So that the money would be used to, as you're saying, not destroy the old paradigm per se, but to be an adjunct to what
Yeah, it would
transition to a
be
new.
create an entirely new institution based on the extremely successful model pioneered by the Japanese and then later by the Singaporeans and copied by the Chinese, which is a future planning agency with like a multi-trillion-dollar budget to create, things like turning the oceans green, replenishing the oceans with fish, turning the deserts green, expanding into the universe, all that kind of stuff. But it wouldn't be like a Stalinist central planning, because the actual work would be put out to competitive bidding and done by, to the private industry to the maximum extent possible, and by existing governments. It wouldn't be a giant monolithic bureaucracy controlling everything. And the other thing is that the way this system is structured at present. So, for example, I created a foundation in my neighborhood with my home as its address, called the White Dragon Foundation. And right now, basically, it's just, well, there's a few members, but basically I'm in charge. And so, for example, if the $40 trillion was, say, put in that foundation, the first thing I would do is I would let everybody know live, real time, okay, here it is. And then I would, whoever put the money in, this would be a collection of the people who control the existing system, would have a veto on how it's used. And I would be like the guy in the Lord of the Rings who takes a ring and melts it in Mount Doom, It would then be an open selection process to select somebody to head the future planning agency, and not me. I don't want the job. I'm not qualified. But I have a few people in mind. But we select some very talented people who would then set up this organization and then start the plans for a massive campaign, to fix the planet. That's the sort of idea we're pushing. And of course, we do believe that we really do need a jubilee, a one-off reset, because the current paradigm, where it basically, the money is created out of nothing and it's carefully handed out through a bunch of highly connected insiders, many of whom are satanic criminals, and then slowly handed out in lower layers and it's resulted in incredible social disparities, concentration of wealth. It's just not, it's a parasitical system as it exists now. And this is not to be mistaken for legitimate industries and businesses that created money by doing, for example, Apple Corporation. They got a lot of money because everybody has an iPhone and they use it. And that's legitimate. We're not going to touch any of that. But the part of the money where it's just put as a computer entry, they create like $1 trillion, or like they did right after Lehman, they fraudulently created $23 trillion and handed it out to their buddies to buy stuff from all over the world, which they didn't earn. We're talking about that fraudulent part. That's the only part that's going to be subject to the Jubilee, not the hard-earned entrepreneurial stuff that's out there that needs to be preserved and protected.
So to your knowledge, who runs the bankers, central bankers banker, the BIS? Who runs that?
Well, apparently there's like a 20-member group that runs it, but there's something they call a trading program. And
AI.
They generate incredible, like you put $1 million in and then you get like $100 billion out or something, and it looks like it connects to people like Henry Kissinger and David Rockefeller and Evelyn de Rothschild. We've actually got names to these people now. They're not like hidden behind the curtain anymore.
Right.
Yeah, the usual suspects.
Yeah.
Ambassador, do you want to comment on that before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I learned about how to do it, I think that, he should just keep holding on to this bonds for a little while, and I believe that the solutions is coming with a remittance. So, all these things is coming by its time. We have had, like small jubilees starting from country to country instead of a one big jubilee. But I think that sooner or later, when the last ones have given up, then I think I think we're quite close. I know that when it comes to electronical funds, it's already done, but now you have physical assets, and then come bonds and boxes and so on after that. But unfortunately, we have had a lot of people that has been fooling civilians and fooling people with both bonds and boxes and dinars and dongs and all these different schemes that have been playing with people's lives, and and all run by the agencies. But let's see what will be happening in the future.
Benjamin, did you want to comment, or were you?
Well, again, I mean, this particular group, I'm fully aware of. I've seen an awful lot of these bonds. Some of them are real. Most of them are fake. Like there was one shown to me by a 94-year-old Kuomintang general many years ago that was probably real. There's a lot of fake ones that we sent my way. But regardless of all that, the point being that the people who are running the current system are not doing a good job. And what we're doing with this case is that we're tired of waiting. I've got people, the CIA are backing us, certainly. They say, just don't even ask to trade paper for paper. Get the physical gold back. Just take it from Basel to North Korea, where it belongs, and to hell with them entirely. That's one piece of advice from CIA Asia. We also have the Gnostic Illuminati, who are, out to destroy the bloodlines, and they're not very nice people, but they're extremely powerful, and they believe in meritocracy, and they're also backing this. We've got a lot of people who are ready to push this, because it's been the checks in the mail. It's going to happen soon for too long, and we're tired of waiting. So we're going to keep pushing with this, and we're going to go after what we can see, because we're going to make it happen. And just wait. Soon it's all going to be a revaluation. No, sorry, we've waited too long. So we're going to keep pushing until it happens. I mean, but we're going to do it in an open way, and it's going to be for the benefit of humanity, and it's going to be transparent. It's not going to be in secret to a bunch of insiders. It's going to be live on the internet. Everybody can see exactly what we're doing, and this is just one thing. It's this future planning agency. This does not contradict anything else that other people are doing, like the One Belt, One Road, or the stuff that India wants to do, or anything else can exist in harmony with this. This is just one, part of it that we're pushing.
Exactly, because what's happening is you can see that there are some corrections. There's everybody on the internet is talking about this global crash, this economic crash that's coming. And of course, that I do reports with Winston Shrout, and Winston couldn't be here with us, but he has called it a correction that's necessary. And quite frankly, if we had not bailed out the banks in 2007 and allowed them to correct, this would not be quite as painful. But it seems like the system had to come down to crash first, Benjamin, though, in order to rebuild it, because it's like a reverse globalization. So what was happening was the New World Order plan was going for this globalized plan, but when we shipped, when it was cheaper to make things in China, even though there's poor quality control, we lost manufacturing here in the United States. Jobs went down, unemployment. And of the fact that the unemployment numbers don't reflect people who just gave up looking for work. So because they changed how that was calculated, it is not, it's really, when I was in college, the stats professor, the first thing they taught you was a quote as soon as you walked in the door. There is statistics, damn statistics, and lies. So,
Well, I've heard that 83.5% of statistics are bogus.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I mean,
sounds like lies to me.
So what we're saying is the mistake we made was going to the fiat dollar, obviously, because there was nothing backing it, and also because the American people were duped. We allowed them to print money and have no control over it. Our Treasury Department doesn't print the money, and there was no way to hold them accountable. Because it's a debt-based system, so eventually, with all the quantitative easing, it was just going to implode unless you continue perpetual quantitative easing. So we were ready, at any point to really have an economic crash, which is really kind of what we're facing right now.
Or a debt jubilee. That's the one analysis.
I've been through bubbles and I've been through crashes. I was in front lines of the Japanese bubble, and I see what's happening in the U.S. I see that there's a big crunch going to hit the stock markets and stuff, and most of the plutocrats seen it, and that's why they're bidding like crazy to buy art and gold and anything physical, because they know the game's up. But and that's going to happen, and that's fine, but it's not enough. I mean, I think the thing that people like me, and I suggest you study The Princes of Yen by a guy called Richard von Werner. He's a German trade economist he comes from a different school of economics. So he understood what the Asians were doing long before I did. I mean, he used to tell me I didn't understand when I was working for Forbes, and he was right. But he understands that there's a very different paradigm for running an economy that works much better, and that's what the Chinese are using, and that's what the Japanese use until they're forced to dismantle it by Bush Senior
in the 90s.
Yeah, and that's what Singapore uses, and it's completely compatible with existing corporations and stuff. But a lot of what, for example, Trump is trying to do is saying, hey, we can do it. Just leave the same old people in charge. This time we're going to reform it. But they're still doing it through the stock market and through a few plutocrats. And it's not really, the best system out there. But again, we're just saying, let us start this new project and let everything else continue as is. We can, as the Canadian pot farmers used to say, let's overgrow the government. We'll produce so much new stuff, so much wonderful things for the planet that everything else will be happy we're there helping, and they'll be better off than they were before, including the United States of America and everybody else.
Ambassador, would you like to comment?
No, I agree with Benjamin, and that we need to start working in saving this planet. We don't have too much time, and it would be wonderful if a family, would just have the power to let it happen. And these other ones, they are just the puppets, the puppeteers, but they have money and they have their own, ways to come into the family to promote their ways, you understand, and their ideas, and twist the history and twist the stories, you understand. But I believe that it's another solution than to kill the humanity and then restart. That's not my idea. I think that
when they first approached me on this plan to kill 90% of the population, the story they told me was, look, there's only about 45 million people who actually produce things, make things, and the rest are like idle eaters. They just sit around, watch TV, and help destroy the environment. And we just want to leave only the productive humans. This is what they're saying. And I say, well, imagine what would happen if you took all these so-called idle eaters and gave them something to do. You would have a supernova. You'd have a Cambrian explosion. And so you're going about it the wrong way. You don't kill them. You give them something to do.
And educate them.
What about, a very different concept, like everybody has to participate if you want to take something out of it. More of and I'm not saying socialist, just trying to say more of an egalitarian system where, there's those who are, look, we're being poisoned, we're being, bombarded with all kinds of GMOs, with vaccines, with, we could go on and on, right? With the fluoride in the water, with the chemtrails. There's a lot of sick people who can't work. Should they just be killed?
No. You see, what the thing is, okay, I'm against basic income because we already have such a system in welfare states where you're going to get, if you're on welfare, they're going to pay your rent and you're going to get enough for the groceries and you'll be able to send your kids to school. But you're not going to be able to take holidays in Hawaii or something unless you work, there's a lot of improvement that can be done. But what we have learned is that if, like, the big failure of the Stalinist central planning was, the guy who works 12 hours a day gets paid the same as the guy who works 6 hours a day. And then he said, well, what am I working 12 hours for? Anyway, look, there's a lot of good knowledge out there. We can try different things like in different areas and take, best practice. But there's always going to be a safety net. And we can learn from the best ones on Earth, for example, in Northern Europe and stuff, to make sure that nobody is left behind, that nobody's starving to death, that nobody can't pay their hospital bills. At the same time, we want to minimize the amount of lazy beer-drinking parasites who should be doing something with their lives.
That's right.
Right, but the problem is this, okay? So the ones that are productive, it could be their family members who might be sick, and not that, let's just, we can't just put everybody who's not working in the category of lazy beer drinking.
I didn't. I just said.
No, I'm not saying that you are. I'm not saying that you are. I'm just saying that they're, let's just try to break it up a little bit more, because there's definitely a group of people who are related to those productive people who they don't want them to die and be killed off and so forth, and not just making money for the pharmaceutical companies, which is, which we don't need either. But in the United States, you get, in the United States, if you get welfare, you can't make more money or you lose the welfare. So you can't, and you might get a little bit of money to take one vacation, but then you're disqualified and you can't get your rent paid. So it's really a bad system in the United States. It's not.
Look, the United States is a mess.
Yeah, it's a mess.
It's a mess.
As Benjamin was talking about the Northern European countries, and as I've been spending most of my life in these countries, I have to say that, unfortunately, this system is also slowly being destroyed by the cabal. And, especially with the refugee crisis as an excuse to basically bankrupt the rich nations of Northern Europe. And I think this is, but to kill them, I don't think is the solution. Yes, then? But that has been the solution of humanity in the past, that when we had this type of situation, we create world wars and we put people in concentration camps to get rid of people. And, unfortunately, I don't buy into this useless soul concept. But I think that it's also very important for people who can do something to do something. You have some people in the world that are basically put in a trap and they cannot get out of this trap. And some of this, like northern socialistic countries, they make people lazy. They make people that they cannot come out of a trap, and also it creates criminality because the children of this welfare takers wants to have a better future, and the only way they can get it is by doing criminality. So it's a vicious circle, and I think that what needs to be done is that families and people like Benjamin, myself, others, should sit down and create a working group and try to find a solution.
There's a lot of people who've done a lot of thinking over this around the world, and we can take from existing best practice from various parts of the world, adapt them to various cultures. This is something that the sort of a meritocracy is perfect for solving. The sort of thing like the Japanese bureaucracy used to be, where when I came to study this country's system, they had the highest per capita income on earth. They were going at, double-digit growth for decades, and they had the lowest gap between the rich and the poor anywhere. And I was amazed to see fish in the rivers in downtown Tokyo at a time when the rest of the world was choking in pollution. This is a system that they dismantled, and this is a system I want to, copy on and improve as a version for this future planning agency, and we'll prove with what we do, with our accomplishments. And as far as welfare and all that kind of stuff, we can go on forever. There's there's whole meetings of scholars and stuff. We can study from around the world the best practices. We can try different things, but it's not an insoluble problem. And above all, we need to make sure every child has proper food and equal opportunity and good education.
Well, it sounds like to me, sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, it sounds like to me we have consensus here. I've had the privilege of meeting Benjamin here in person, and we've talked about this, and I agree with everything he says. And a meritocratic future planning agency is what is necessary. That, as he said, the existing structures are there. There are people who've had these ideas before, but we just need to implement it. What do you both say? The people who you have been in contact with, who are pulling the strings, are there elements at least of these power brokers that are on the side of this idea? What do you say? First of all, Ambassador, what do you say?
I believe it is, but I believe also that it is a split in the family with people that supports what the cabal likes. You understand? And so you need to convince everyone to do the right thing. You understand? And that is by showing by actions. And that's why we put up the global mission of peace here, to try to show that people that didn't have all this money will be able to do these projects and to do fulfill their dreams themselves. And I'm happy that these things is going forward, that we're doing. And and I've been seeing a lot of positive things happening with also the people from the cabal side coming in and want to help and want to be a part of a new era. So as we have people in our own family that maybe support some of the cabal people, and you have also people in the cabal that supports us. So I think this is that we have to come together and find a solution to work together and then show to the others that it's possible to be done. Because
sounds good.
There are a lot of people that see what is happening around the world and say, you see, it's hopeless. We better do something drastic. And drastic is, is to take away a lot of people.
But the other drastic way is to have like a World War III equivalent campaign. I mean, the reason the Japanese were able to have double-digit growth for decades was because they kept this sort of war planning economy, but they used it not for war, but for development.
Yes.
And we need, that's a model that's worked. It's Singapore is one of the poorest places on earth, and now it's I think number 3. And if you exclude places like Liechtenstein, which are just places for the rich to hide their money, they're number 1 in terms of people actually earn their own money. And we learn from them, and we adapt such a system to unleash the full potential of the West and the rest of the world.
So do you say that the people who are behind, or that you're in touch with, their at least elements are on the side of this idea of a future planning agency?
I can say that the British branch of the Rothschilds and some of the French, yes, some of the French, no. I can say that the Gnostic Illuminati, parts of the FSB, parts of the various Chinese secret societies, a lot of people are behind this. And the fact that we got these Manchu bonds shows that the North Koreans and those people are into it. So I think we've got a lot of support.
Right. So the
I just want to
bring
in something that it's one thing for, I think, people who are in these positions to be making these decisions. Obviously, they're going to want to compensate themselves for the job that they're doing.
Yeah, however, look, we're going to have. I'm going to be right out front. There's going to be a 10% slush fund to buy off all the dangerous types of guns and stuff who made it possible. It's no other way it's going to happen. And we'll be upfront about that. 10% goes towards paying off all the people who've been fighting and risking their lives to make this possible.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, it's like a finder's fee. Yeah, it's like a finder's fee, whatever.
Grease the palms.
But the thing is this: it's kind of like when policy, gets so cumbersome that it makes it almost. I just want, if you guys have background noise, just please mute when you have that, because it changes the screen on we can hear that in the recording. Okay, so what I was saying is there a way to have egalitarianism? Okay, what we have is such a huge discrepancy between wages, between what my time is worth versus what someone else's time is worth, that it makes it almost impossible for people to lift themselves out of poverty. There's people who want to. There's people who really have the the drive and the inspiration to do it,
Okay,
and the
but
motivation. But it
yeah,
makes it very hard when you have, you get strapped with student loans, you suddenly find yourself without work, you go to college, you try to do good, and then you can't get a job because, well, there's just so many things that work against people to
okay,
try to
well,
get ahead.
yeah, no, the United States is a mess. Okay, I mean
Yes.
the whole idea of student loans, for example, like Canada, for example, from 1938 to 1973, when the Bank of Canada was run by the government. I remember when I was a kid, the governor of the Bank of Canada lived across the street from me in my middle class neighborhood, and he went to work in a Volkswagen. Okay, but because it was government owned and the government created the money, people didn't have to pay for university. They just had to be smart enough to pass the exam.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not how it is here. It's very, very
I
difficult.
know,
And
I know,
it,
it's a mess.
it's a
Same in Australia. We had
terrible,
free
terrible
education. That's
mess.
right.
No, it's a terrible
Yeah.
mess. So what happens is then you start getting into all of this debt immediately, and that affects your credit score. And when you're
The
then
money's
your
there. It's
credit,
just been
That's
abused.
listen,
Babylonian debt slavery. That's what
exactly,
the
Yeah.
system is.
Yep. Yep.
exactly. And so what happens is when your credit score, now they're using credit scores in addition to your resume. They're running your credit score. They're running everything that you're doing online or whatever you're saying on Facebook or this or that, and whatever. We get that. That's a given. But the credit score things sometimes happen beyond your control, and you're just ruined. You can't live on this planet. If you miss your payments and you go into some sort of debt or foreclosure or something, which is a whole other issue, it's just a disaster. People really, it's such
Yeah,
a
you
disaster.
live in
It
the
has
heart of darkness, okay, in the United States with that whole Babylonian debt slavery system. And it's your overlords who are going to overthrow and we're going to cancel all that debt. It's a
Yep.
one-off thing, though, but that's going to happen. I
yeah.
guarantee you. Once this whole idea of what was it, a global debt fund or whatever. No, it's a global credit fund, okay? And this whole system of Babylonian debt slavery is going to end. Okay, the United States is a mess because it was taken over by these people.
Right.
1913.
Yeah.
Oh, before then.
No,
No,
all the
but
debt would be written off.
I have to say
They
one
just put it,
thing.
well, go ahead,
Mm.
Ambassador. Yeah, I know
Go
you
ahead.
want to comment on this, of course.
I think that when you look at America, it is like a tyranny turning into. Unfortunately, the future for the American people doesn't look very bright if it continues the same way that it goes right now. But I think that, like Benjamin says, the most important thing is that everyone should have equal opportunity to education. You understand? And then it's a system which is used also in other parts of the world where you receive a bad credit, and then basically you're fucked. You cannot even get an apartment. You cannot get a living. You have nothing that you can do. And I think this is very important that
But
we need to find a solution to help people come out of this debt problem. And
another
also
thing,
companies that discriminate and banks that discriminate
Right.
against people with small debt should also be punishable for it, by my opinion.
Well, there's also no trust. I mean, we have lost the way in our legal system, and sadly, we could see this as a result of what happened with the Senate confirmation hearing with Supreme Court
Brett
Justice
Kavanaugh.
Brett Kavanaugh. Now, this was a disgrace. It was an embarrassment around the world to see these people, come so unglued, and it was just political,
It was
political,
posturing. Yeah, it was games.
politics of hate, and
well,
we
it was
can't
public.
continue with that. Yeah. Go ahead, Benjamin.
Yeah, it's public suicide. I mean, they're you see their bag of tricks isn't working anymore, and they don't know what to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And also, to be honest with you, I mean, even if it's true or not true, I think that if he would have the same situation as he had in America, there's no way in hell that in Europe he would be elected to any post. You understand?
Yeah.
Just by her coming there talking and the thing coming out.
Yeah.
Okay, there's so
can't have
many
someone
lies.
make fake allegations. You can't. If someone wants to be.
Okay, hold on. Let's. There's so many lies. Let's get to this Brett Kavanaugh thing a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, he helped cover up the murder of Vince Foster. That's well known among the insiders, and he was a top henchman for the cabal, the Bushes and the Clintons and stuff. So his real crimes were involved in the cover-up of murder and stuff like that. But he was doing it on behalf of the people who were now trying to stop him because he suddenly changed sides but they couldn't bring up, oh, well, you covered up our murder of Vince Foster
Right.
for us, right? So they had to make up this stuff, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well, this is exactly
it's so
the point.
bizarre. That's right.
That's exactly what was missing, Benjamin. You're absolutely right. It was his
The
record.
8,000 pages
It
that are
was
covered
his
up.
decision
Yeah.
record. Exactly. They couldn't bring it up. You're absolutely right. But the whole legal system as a whole, when you go through the family court system, this is what happens. They absolutely decimate your savings. Whatever assets you have that you worked for your whole life, you get into that family court system and you don't realize that this is maritime law or admiralty law. You don't realize that you're basically, still considered a child, that you can't represent yourself because of the way the laws are here. People lose everything. This is so unfair.
That's why
There's no
you need.
possible way. They take the dockets, they monetize them. The courts are corporations, okay? They all have Dun and Bradstreet ratings. They take the dockets and they monetize them at the Treasury Department. They steal the money from the Treasury Department. This is looting, okay? This is what the global debt facility was created for. It was the debt, it was prepaid debt on the planet. There's double ledger accounting. And what the banks were doing with the mortgages, why so many people foreclosed, was they were only using the one-sided ledger accounting, which was including interest. So the global debt facility was there for the people and was there for the governments, but the governments hijacked it. People were never able to go there and get their what was put in reserve. And well, let's talk about these global collateral accounts. That's what these accounts were set. Some of these accounts were set up for this.
Look,
time, and other trusts were set up for this global debt facility, which people were supposed to have basic living and basic expenses for living on this planet.
A global debt facility shouldn't exist. There should be no such thing. A
Quite
global
right.
credit facility, yes. A global debt facility, no. Okay? They're two different things.
Should be outlawed.
Credit is actually built on reality. Debt is just a form of slavery using an illusion. Okay? The system needs to be fundamentally changed. And like I said, if they don't agree, it's going to be like the French Revolution. It's going to be guillotines, or I guarantee it's the U.S. is ready already with firing squads and military tribunals, and they've got 57,000 people they're ready to shoot.
Okay, I think change is in the wind. Okay, guys, there's so much talk on the internet. I think we're chewing over all stuff that people know. What are we going to do? Who should sit around the table and create this planning agency? Who has to sit around the table to make decisions now? What do you think?
Ambassador, let's go. Let me see if Ambassador wants to comment on what we were just talking about, please.
About the debt facility or
well,
what?
Yes, the debt facility.
What to do now?
Who needs to sit around the table?
A to B.
No,
and then
personally, I think that we need to set up a working group, and in that working group, we should have people that some of the world leaders that actually do care for humanity, and also other knowledgeable people in all different arenas, and we should sit down and we should start working on creating a new era and creating this 555 platform, which was 2012 already agreed upon that it should happen. And I think that we should not delay that. And I don't know, I think Benjamin knows that too, but all these accounts they have after 25 years have gone. The interest that has been on that account is supposed to go to humanitarian projects, to go to the people. But this money just disappears. It's not going to the people. We have no problems with money at all in the world. We have problem only with one thing, and it's will. Okay? So if we can make people want to do the change and want the change to happen, then we will succeed.
Well,
I think we have people like Putin, for example, who has been doing a lot of great job in both with taking away debt and standing hard against the cabal for a very, very long time. I think he is a good guy to have in this group, and also some other leaders too.
Okay, so I want to just comment too, because part of the problem is the issue of trust. Because what has happened in the United States is it does affect everywhere in the world. And what we have is a missing $21 trillion from our DOD and also HUD, Housing Urban Development. And the problem with this is that this all went into black budget. Okay, so this is supposedly, according to Catherine Austin Fitts, she did a report and discovered that this was going to black budget projects, which are secret space programs. So what's happened, though, was the Federal Accounting Standards Board decided to change how they classified these projects, and they basically said that these are classified, and we don't need to report. We don't need to account for projects that are classified. So basically, it gave the U.S. government permission to cook the books. And so this is a problem, because if they're not real, then we really kind of have a fantasy land in terms of really the accounting for the federal
Well, it's all
government.
fantasy anyway. It's all funny money. It's all fantasy, isn't it?
But it's robbing the
And also
American
interesting.
people want that $21 trillion refunded, because no
All
one ever
fantasy money.
consented. No one ever consent. Wait, it came from our taxes, Steve. No
True.
one ever
People work for
consented.
it.
No one ever consented.
Okay, hold
Look,
on
the
a
funds
second.
are there. The funds are there.
So
But what are we going to do now? We
hold
know
on,
this.
let the
Yeah, we have to go on.
Go ahead, Ambassador.
Yeah, no, I think that like I stated here, is that we have all the money we need exists.
Yes.
Just take one account there that belongs to the family. We could do everything.
All right, here's my take on it. Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry,
on,
you're
Dora.
cutting in and out a little bit with your internet connection, Ambassador.
Mm.
Go
Yes,
ahead.
Benjamin.
Yeah. I
Okay,
think it's back.
here's the thing. It's all psychological. Suppose that I've said this before. If the dollar disappeared, all the money disappeared, the stock market went to zero, people would still be there, houses would still be there, factories would still be there, know-how would still be there. It's how we organize ourselves, and that's why I think the system is so bad. A reboot, for example, it's very easy. Everybody, wherever you're living, you own it. And all your debt, it's gone. It's a one-off thing. There's all sorts of things that can be done. And this is real, okay? Your house is real. The place you're sitting in is real. The people you know is real. Zeros in a bank account, it's all psychology, all right? And don't forget that. And we just need to improve how we organize our society. And with our future planning agency, we want to provide a role model for that.
And the gold sitting behind Basel in the Jura Mountains is real too.
That's real too. And the
That's
real
right.
owners are saying it's time to give it back. And the real people who stole it, like Evelyn de Rothschild and David de Rothschild and these people, are going to be hunted down and killed unless they give back their gold.
Okay, Ambassador, comments.
Yes, I agree. This is a part of a remit and surrender. If they don't remit back the gold to the rightful owners, they have no right to surrender anymore. So they will be taken out. So I think that's in their interest and for the family interests to give it back to the rightful owners. And I feel that we are very close to a breakthrough on many fronts right now. And,
why do you say that?
No, because what I hear from my people, it's a lot of things that I cannot talk about on the internet, but there's a lot of movement that's happening in the background as we're speaking, and this thing is going to happen very soon now, and it will change the whole world economy when they are finalized.
Benjamin, can you say something concrete to that? What do you see moving in the background?
Well, you see the military tribunals about to start in the U.S. You see a big, contraction in the amount of funny money out there, which is starting to, affect. It's like it's starting with the outlying places, but it's going to hit everywhere. They're crashing the system for sure, and they are arresting and rounding up the really worst of the criminals. And there's stuff I can't talk about either, but we're certainly working on things here in Japan and elsewhere. We're not sitting idle, and anybody who's in our way is going to be removed one way or the other.
So let me get this straight. We've got the Marines backing Trump. or Marines and some admirals and whoever. You've got military.
Right, we have the military.
Okay, we have the Vatican. Where do they sit? What's their situation?
They are also with us, believe it or not. I'm in touch with the people
Elements
that are with us too.
All right. Okay.
They want an expansion out into the universe. They want to send arcs full of humans to pollinate the universe.
The British royal family.
There is a P2, and then there's the Gnostic Illuminati are with us. The Chinese Freemasons are with us. You know, a lot of people are with us. Okay, big, powerful groups.
Well, it would appear to me they need to sit around the table.
It just seems like the trigger point is going to happen in the United States because it has to have this ripple effect around the world. Is that right, Ambassador and Benjamin?
Yes, because you have all the major world institutions, Eastern America, and they have to collapse so that they can move where it's supposed to be. I mean, the United Nations already have a new building, and many of these institutions have already new buildings in other countries. So you need to collapse that whole structure. So, you know, and I was very happy to see that Nikki Haley was finally, leaving her position in the United Nations. I think that was a blessing to the world. Yes, sir. And we have to be careful with these Christian fundamentalists.
Okay, Ambassador Luis. Go ahead, Benjamin. You wanted to comment on Nikki Haley?
Well, no, I mean, all those people telling that whole lie story, that whole BS world story that they're putting on their corporate newspapers, that whole story has to be replaced with the truth. And the other thing, of course, I've been told by the P2 is that Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel is a major blockade. He has to be removed. Anyone else who's just standing away has to be removed. We're almost there. And it's going to happen. And we're going to make it happen. We're not sitting around and waiting. We're making it happen. And I'm doing stuff directly as well as indirectly, but so is everyone else. We all have to do what we can, but we all agree on a few basic things. We want to improve how we run this planet. We want to stop poverty and environmental destruction, and we want to create a paradise on Earth. We want to unleash all the forbidden technology. There's so many things we want to do. Let's do them.
Yeah, we have to protect our children.
We're going to move them out of the way.
Yeah, we have to protect our children, which is why the president is made it his agenda. One of his priorities is to of course, that executive order back on December 21st last year, to seize the assets of those indicted for crimes against humanity. So we also have had other executive orders to help him, assist him with his executive power, executive privileges. So he can call martial law. He can call assemble these military tribunals, as Benjamin said. And this is one of the reasons he tested this presidential alert system earlier last week. So it looks like you're right, Benjamin, and both Ambassador. There are some changes. There's things that are so much happening behind the scenes, and it's so hard to know what's reliable and what's not, which is one of the reasons that we wanted to bring this interview together today, was to try to really get to the to some truth, because of course we know we don't have control over mainstream media yet. We know that's still almost completely. We see that there are a few reporters, at least on Fox in the United States, who are having this open discussions and dialogues. You're not going to find it on CNN. I'm sorry, it's just not there yet. And so we know that we're relying. So
look, I think we've talked enough. I'm gonna leave you soon, but we'll leave you with this. We've already got the top, and we're working our way down. So the people lower down, it's just a matter of time before we get to them. But we've already taken out the top. All right? It's just a matter of time. It's now mathematically inevitable. The good guys have won, and we're going to make sure that it's going to be a happy day for everybody and every living creature on this planet.
I just want to give us another minute, Benjamin, if you could, just because we want to have the ambassador just comment, see if he has a follow-up to say before you leave us. And then I have an announcement to make. Thanks. Go ahead, Ambassador.
Yeah, no, I agree with Benjamin. I think that we are half there, or maybe even more. And we just need to have patience, and, we will do it.
Okay, well, I hope the two of you can come back for a second round at these discussions. And I hope as things progress a little bit more, we can have a little bit different conversation. So
Well,
Benjamin, would you join us again to
sure. You know,
continue this conversation?
when there's enough to talk about, but
Yes,
right
Absolutely.
now it's time for action, not talking. Okay.
I
exactly,
hear you loud and
exactly.
clear. And just so our viewers know, we want to thank Benjamin and the ambassador for joining us today, because I just felt it was so important. We needed to get this information out, behind the scenes kind
Mhm.
of intel and reporting. But also, the Goldfish Report is on the road to the White House, and I needed to make an announcement because we have White House privilege. And what we're doing is a fund drive right now, since this is a completely viewer-supported social media. We rely on the viewers to make this happen. And since YouTube deleted our channel back in March of this year, and of course WordPress deleted our blogs this year as well, our circulation of our reports has been down. We never monetized our channel. So without our viewers, we can't make this happen. So we're doing our part to bring these videos to you, and in return, we'll continue to bring them to you commercial free. So let's get the viewers. If you want to have Goldfish Report reporting from the White House, from the briefing rooms, then let's make this happen. And you can go to our YouTube. I'm sorry, you can go to our website at thegoldfishreport.com. There's a PayPal link there, and there's also a Patreon page where you can become a patron. And for our patrons, you do get to have early release of our exclusive interviews, including this one, prior to the public release, for 2 days prior to the public release. So there's special privileges, and also live streams will come from the White House for our Patreon viewers. But we can't make this happen, folks, without you. If you want truth, which is what we're all spending our time doing here today, if you want truth, and it's not that you're not going to find on mainstream media, we're going to do our best to try to bring it to you. So if folks want to see that happen,
Yeah.
then do your part. So I want to thank also Steve. Thank you, Steve. Did you have any final comments, Steve, before we sign out?
Just that the time is for action. Enough talk, time for action now.
Time for action. Well, let's make it happen. Let's do this. Thank
Okay.
you all so much. Thank you all. And it was a pleasure to see you all. And I thank our viewers for viewing. And this concludes this edition of the Goldfish Report.